A few years back, when I was still working in the classroom, I was asked to present in our diocese a talk on getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in the classroom. Growing up as a self diagnosed perfectionist, I recognized the extreme anxiety in my students that emerged as a result of their discomfort for what they would deem as quote unquote failure. This looked like not mastering something the first time they tried it, getting a 98% on their test instead of 100, or simply not being the first to accomplish something or to receive the most praise for their accomplishment. But this observation went beyond just my students. It wasn't just them that was struggling with not having all of the answers and having those answers come easily. I saw it in my coworkers too. Teachers who had underlying fear that they might look stupid in front of their students if they tried something new and it didn't work out, or if they were asked a question and they didn't know the answer because they were supposed to be the expert. I saw it in administrators who struggled with inner turmoil over doing the right thing because they knew that they would have to endure the unending parent complaints no matter how they attempted to resolve a situation. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't struggle with a lot of these same insecurities and still do struggle with some of these same insecurities. In this episode, I'm joined by one of the most influential people in my life who has inspired me to continue to grow and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and opening myself up to doing things messy, B minus work, to letting myself be judged, to growing in humility, to growing in courage. And at the end of this episode, I know you are going to have some tools to grow in these same areas as well. And when you grow in these areas, I promise you, not only are you going to grow in virtue and holiness, your whole world is going to change. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker Kylie Hine. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This week, I am so excited to be joined by Amanda Rayhel. Amanda has been a practicing RN for 16 years. Throughout her nursing career, she has provided care in oncology and infusion services. She also has experience in leadership and charge nursing roles. In addition to IV therapy, she provides online coaching for moms, mental wellness supplementation, and teaches bar fitness. Over the last 2 years, Amanda has found fulfillment outside of the hospital walls to help others make their wellness a priority now and not someday. So I'm so excited to have my sister here, Amanda. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome.
And so if we sound the same, it's not the same person. We get confused a lot, both in looks and in our voice.
I did not even think about that, but it's very true.
Okay, so your business is called Someday Wellness, and we both know that someday is a very personal word to both of us. Will you share with our audience how your business came into being?
Yeah. Um, Gosh. Okay. So that might be a long story, but I'll try to condense it so we don't go on and on. But yeah, for you and I, the word someday means a lot. I I have it on my body. It's hanging over our driveway as we come up to our house. So I see the word someday every day. Um, that make me emotional already. Okay. So as you said, I most of my nursing was in oncology and infusion services, and I worked in clinics and inside the hospital. And so throughout my time when I became a mom, I wanted to really work on myself. And of course, it all started with weight loss and getting your body back after motherhood. And so that's kind of how I transpired into this wellness approach. And being in the hospital, we really didn't focus on a lot of wellness care. We really focused on like being reactive and taking care of the sick person. And as I was growing up, as I was growing through nursing, we lost our mother. And so someday, oh my gosh, why'd you do this to me? The Holy Spirit is taking over. Okay. So definitely emotional talking about that. Um, so when we lost our mom, it was very unexpected. None of us were prepared for that. And it just brought a whole new perspective of tomorrow isn't promised, someday isn't promised. So when I decided to leave the hospital and make wellness a priority, it was you just can't keep putting off things until tomorrow because they're not promised. So to me, someday means, not only do you have to stop being reactive in your healthcare, you have to start being proactive, but also knowing, when to take the vacations, to stop telling your kids, we'll do the things tomorrow. Take the time to get down on the floor and play with them, to stop putting off things until tomorrow because it's just not promised. So, in a nutshell, that's where that came from. Is it really kind of stemmed from mom losing her unexpectedly. That's kind of where it got brought into the wellness piece, but also, someday we're going to be reunited and someday things are, pain and suffering go away. You totally derailed me. Thank you for doing that. Um, so when I think of the word someday, I feel like sometimes I can get all over the place because it has so many different meanings to me. But again, as I talk to my clients and I talk to other moms of, you know, we can come up with a million excuses of not to do something, but we can't keep waiting because that someday isn't promised. And so, what can we do today to make our future, our tomorrow better, but more so just be in the moment? And maybe that is in your health and in your wellness. Maybe it is in your prayer life. Maybe it is with your spouse or your kids or your business. Part of me leaving the hospital was I can't keep talking about someday I wanted to stay home with my kids, someday I wanted to have more time with them. I just had to do the hard thing and trust what Jesus was telling me to do was to close that chapter of oncology and take a leap of faith. And every day in a small business, that is definitely what you do. So I had to take a little dose of my own medicine of stop waiting for someday and just to do the things that might lead me to being happier every day.
Yeah, I think it's very true. And I think, you said I have someday written on my body. When our mom died, ironically, the thing that she wouldn't want us to do was get tattoos. And that
Oh
was
my
the
gosh,
first
yeah.
thing we went and did was we tattooed the word someday on our
I know.
bodies as a reminder of her. But also, I think as a reminder of ourselves that, again, someday isn't promised. We were always told someday we'll do this. Our parents bought a farm. I think I was 11, you were probably 14. When
Yeah.
we bought the farm, it was incredibly stressful on our parents because we didn't have the financial means to make all of the dreams come true, but they were going after their dreams anyway. And so, we ate the bologna sandwiches and we didn't have a
Yeah.
lot of money. We built our own house from the ground up. That was our family bonding. I think there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of frustration,
Yeah.
and it was
Blood, sweat, and tears, but
yeah.
definitely faith, you know, faith
And
and
I
love.
I think that's the one thing that we can really take from our parents through all of that was their faith and their love for one another, even when they didn't like each other, and doing the hard thing. So
Mhm.
I would love to hear more about your journey from being in the hospital and finding the courage, and how do you get that faith to do the hard thing? I think there are a lot of women, and I've asked women this, is it that you don't know what God wants you to do, or is it that you feel like you just can't do it? And most of them know exactly what the big dream that God has put on their heart is. They can
Mm.
explain it, they can define it, But there's always a but. We don't have enough money. It's not going to work out. This isn't the right time. There's always a reason. So, how did you navigate some of those things to go after that thing? Like you said, when Jesus was calling you to do this, you loved oncology. I could see that in you. You loved being with your patients,
Yeah.
but you wanted time with your kids.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like, 8 years ago, I was introduced to network marketing, right? People hate that. I'm going to say some people hate the word MLM, and I totally understand why, because dealt with some bad companies. And I was honestly a person who was like, stop asking me to be a Mary Kay rep. I'm not into that. And I had a friend doing another company, and I was like, I don't want to host the parties. I'm really bad at it. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Okay. And then when I was a mom and I was again working on myself, I wanted to have my body back because, for me, I really struggled with that growing up. I always had a lack of self worth, a lack of self love. And I didn't realize that till I was older. But how that kind of ties together is I was working on my weight loss. And of course, somebody approached me with this company. And I was like, I don't know about that. I'm not into that. But I like this company and I like the products I was using. And so I thought, you know what? If I could have a little bit more money to say yes to my kids more. And then we've had that conversation a lot too of, and it's kind of how we were brought up, right? Like when we go through the Arby's line, okay, when we were driving through Arby's, we were only going if you could buy 6 sandwiches for $6, right? But I wanted to be able to tell my kids, sure, we can go through because I have a little extra money. So I kind of was like, okay, sure, I'll learn a little bit about this business, right? And through that business, I surrounded myself with coaches and mentors. And not only what I took away from it wasn't necessarily the business, but it was really getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like they pushed me to do things that really made me uncomfortable. And I was a small town girl and people judged me for it. People do not want you to succeed at something like that because it's something different. It's something different than what they do day in, day out. So it was really hard for me trying to dabble in this. Of course, I was doing my full-time nursing career, and this was just something that I was trying to learn, but I saw value in what these coaches were bringing to me to really boost my self-confidence and what I could offer the world in a different way. So fast forward, I fell in love with the dream of these people, these other women, some of my mentors who were able to leave their jobs and stay home with their kids and be able to work from their phones and have time freed up. So I fell in love with that dream. And I think so many people want that dream, right? We see these people who are like, you always question, like, what do they do that they have all this free time to be able just to not be working this 9 to 5? Well, for me, I really fell in love with the dream of the time freedom because I had kids and we were adding to our family. And I remember being at the hospital and like being on lunch break and I'm scrolling through Facebook and I'm like, man, I'm so jealous of those teachers who are those teachers who are out getting to go on a walk on this beautiful summer day and the people that are taking their kids to the pool. Like, I just want that. I want to be able to have this design lifestyle of that. And of course, it was just a dream. It was always just a dream to me to be able to do that. And I didn't know how to do that because, again, I was just learning in some of that network marketing thing, and the company that I was with was not a good fit for me. So I really questioned myself of what in the world am I doing? Like posting on social media. I remember telling my husband, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I want to go this path, but I don't know how to get there. I love what I do. I'm content. I'm really just content and I'll just dream about this on the other hand. Well, fast forward a couple years, I fell in love with another company that really spoke to me, and it was about mental wellness because I was irritable and I was stressed, and I would come home at the end of the day. I had just had my younger son, and it was like I was doing all the things. I was eating right. I was going to the gym, but I really had compassion fatigue. I was irritable and snappy, and I just felt like that was not the mom that I was supposed to be. And I was like, what is wrong with me? So enter in this other company that I didn't know I needed that was really about mental wellness. Again, I still do because that was 5 years ago. I still have some amazing mentors who I absolutely love, but they really I think if anything you can take away is surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you to keep going towards your goals and going towards your dreams. Like, the people are still gonna judge you, and people did. They still judged me for what I was doing, but I had to know that if I was going to maybe do something for myself and for my family that was gonna bring me a little more happiness and a little less stress, I couldn't listen to the people who didn't have what I wanted, right? Those people aren't gonna support you. It's the people that have what you want, those are the people that you wanna surround yourself with because they're gonna keep inspiring you, they're gonna keep lifting you up, and they're gonna give you the tips and tools and tangible things to help move towards what you want. So, enter in COVID. That was a hard time in the hospital. Again, I don't wanna go down that rabbit hole, but it was hard. COVID was hard in the hospital. You're being asked to do things that you don't feel comfortable with. Your beliefs, your values are being questioned, and you feel like you're just one of the herd. And so that moment going through COVID, our dad going through chemotherapy himself, like I really prayed and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I had told my husband, knowing that dad was going to pass away, I felt like I could close that oncology chapter and just kind of be content with it and know that, okay, God is telling you that you can do something else and he's going to guide you. So I wrote my resignation letter to the hospital with zero clue of what I was going to do. How could I make income, right? Because we couldn't be supported on one income. So what am I going to do? I don't know. What can you take that you're learning from all these other people? Like this other business, yes, it was going to help me bridge an income gap, but I still had a lot more income that I was going to need to make to even be close to what I was going to do at the hospital. So I just really felt this burning desire like, Amanda, you can do a difference and you can help shift to really focusing on that wellness care. And I wrote that resignation letter. I decided I I went on a trip to California, and again, it was around those people who are just going to inspire you. And I remember them talking about just jumping out of an airplane. When you jump out of an airplane, you're unsure if that parachute's going to open 100%, right? But you have faith that it's going to. And I don't remember all the details of the coach talking, but I remember that little bit. And when I was out in California, I knew that when I came home, I was turning in that resignation letter. And I just had to have faith that the parachute was going to open and it was going to work out. So I just started asking around, what were other things that I could do? And it really just fell into place that I could have a business, I could have a small business. I had already gotten my LLC, even though I wasn't really sure if I was going to do 100% online coaching. And I just created a brand for myself of, I want to do a little bit of IV therapy. I'm going to do a little vitamin therapy. I'm going to figure it out. Messy action is 100% my style of doing a business. And you just had to go with the flow. And again, praying that that parachute was gonna open and praying that God and I still do every single day of, "God, send me the people that I can help. Send me whoever it is that needs to hear this, let them hear that." And when I get a message like that, that I've been praying for somebody to, talk to, I've been praying for this solution and it has happened. Those are just more signs that, okay, God, I'm on the right path that God has wanted me to do. So I feel like I went on a whole tangent of how I got started, but I feel like, again, as you said, like, there's lots of things along the way, the fear of the judgment. People that I worked with, respected physicians that I worked with, I know judge me. I still feel that way. When they see me, I don't feel that I'm respected because of the decisions that I decided to leave where I was. And, ultimately, it's not their life. And they don't know what I was feeling when I needed to make those decisions to leave and move on. And when somebody else tells you or sends you a message and says the difference that you've made in their life, it just is one reminder of, even if you didn't make a whole corporation happy, you made an impact to that one person's life, and that is enough.
Yeah. I think there's so many things you said, and I'll go back and maybe phone some pieces, but people don't have to understand our decisions. It's Also, it's not always easier on the other side. Leaving your business job or transitioning jobs, we're not saying you have to become a stay-at-home mom or work from home mom, but when you make a big transition, there are going to be people who do not understand. And it also is not always necessarily going to be easier on the other side. But there is a peace that comes when you're doing what God wants you to do, what God is asking you to do. And that I think is what is so different. There are a lot of unknowns in your business now, being outside of the
Yeah.
hospital every single week, every single month. And there are different stressors. But for me, seeing you where you are now from where you were, there's a different kind of peace about you because I think you know that this is where you're supposed to be and this is what you're supposed to be doing. And for those of you listening who don't know Amanda or I personally, Amanda is my older sister. She's 3 years older. And hearing you talk about lack of self worth and self love, for me, being the little sister, I was always looking up to you and you always just seemed so convicted and confident. And I think this is just a great reminder that we don't see the inside. We don't see the turmoil that's going on inside of someone. When I looked at you, I always saw the person, and you still are this person to me. You are so supportive of other people. You show up, you are the biggest cheerleader. You were always at my basketball games, my volleyball games. Same with our little brother. You were there cheering us on. If you see something on our social media, you're going to share it. You are a huge advocate for getting us to set boundaries for ourselves, to stand up for ourselves, and to use our voices. And whenever I hear you talk about you not always having that confidence to do it yourself, but you just doing it anyway, that is what I think of. That's what I think of when I think of you and the things that I respect and admire you for. I might not always agree with what you say. Sometimes you
Mhm.
push me out of out of my comfort zone, but
Yeah.
I respect you for it and I love you for it because you're not afraid to say what needs to be said, even if people don't like it.
Yeah, I feel like, as sisters, we've grown up with each other knowing those things, and you and I both know, like, we've had some hard conversations where we just butt heads, and we're so similar in so many ways, but there's also a lot of things where we come head to head, and it's like, okay, we have to just try to see from each other's perspective. But yeah, I feel like for the longest time, being a people pleaser, always saying yes, not embracing that word no, like, that was something that I had to really work on over the years. And so, like, as I think is sometimes for my, self-respect, and some of that sometimes can come off as me being mean, or which I don't do it in a mean way, I don't feel like, but having that voice and kind of standing up for some things where in the past I would be very timid or I don't wanna have confrontation, I would just kinda sit back and not say anything. But I've definitely worked on that. And so I remember feeling in one of our conversations, you said to me, Amanda, you've changed. And I thought, You're right. I have changed. I have changed because I am going to speak up and I am going to say what I'm feeling. And I feel like I have a backbone and I'm not going back on that because, I don't want to be the convenient friend anymore. Not to you, but like to other people. Like I was that convenient friend. I was always there for them. They were never there for me. So, whether it be a friendship or a relationship or, even employers, it's like, I have value and I want you to see that too. And if you're not, it's going to be a two-way street. So, yeah, I do feel like as we've grown up, those are some things that I really embraced. And it was like, I'm going to have to change that. Otherwise, on the inside, I just would pick myself apart, and some of the choices that I made in my teen years and into my 20s, when I look back, it was really because I was feeling really crappy on the inside and so I allowed some things to happen to me because of the way that I was feeling, because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough for something better.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you got from our dad is your ability to be very direct. And it's a gift, but just like you said, it can be misinterpreted sometimes. And I know that this has
Mm,
happened in my own life where I am very direct about something and it is perceived as being cold or,
mhm.
that whole context. But I
Yeah.
do appreciate that about you and that because of the way that you support people, for example, you in my own life, because you are supportive in your directness, we can understand that it comes from a place of love. And it really is, you care about people.
Yeah.
Something that you're really great at, and maybe this wasn't always easy, but you've grown in, is I think asking for help. You're not afraid
Mm,
to, call 10 babysitters until you can find a babysitter because hey,
right.
I need to have this date night or organizing a fundraiser, whatever it is, you're not afraid to ask people for help. You're not afraid to get the no's. What is
Yeah.
some advice that you can give for women who struggle with that?
Yeah. I mean, nobody loves the word no, right? Um, I do think that, as strong women, we very oftentimes just feel like it's our responsibility. I can do this. I don't need anybody. But man, it takes a tribe, it takes a village. And especially as a mom, like I am always needing help to get kids somewhere. My husband works in a different city. And so he's not close to us. And we commute anyways to where I spend most of our days and where our kids that go to school and have activities. So I am always needing to rely on other moms to say, hey, can you pick up or can you take? And everybody's always willing and they're in the same boat. And so when you can just ask for help and just say, "Hey, can you do this?" And in return, I'm always like, "I'm happy to do it when I'm available, so make sure that you keep my phone number." It's so it's so helpful, and I think about my husband who has trouble with this, and I'm like, "Just ask so and so for help. Like, it's okay. Ask the guys, ask my brothers. You don't always have to hold this weight on your shoulders." And even a side note, we were having to dig our hydrant out a few weeks ago, and I went outside, I got back, and I was checking on him, and he's digging this hole, sweating and sweating, and I looked at him, I'm like, "Would you like me to help you?" And he kinda looked at me and he said, "No." And I'm like, "I can help you. You don't have to do this on your own." It actually reminds me of my childhood. I was like, "I can do hard things. I can do physical labor." And he was like, "Okay, yeah, I need your help." And together we did it. It was hard, and together we did those things. We did that. And so it was just a reminder. I'm like, "Dude, just ask for help." I do not find that asking for help is a weakness because it takes strength and courage to ask those words. "Can you help me?" And so the same thing goes for doing our fundraiser, asking for the donations. It's very uncomfortable for me to ask people for other donations to help us create the scholarship and ask for the donations, but people will do it. People are going to tell me no. And I just say, okay, I move on. And hearing the word no really, again, is a work. It's been a work in progress because, again, 8 years ago, when I would want to share something with somebody and they're like, ew, no, I don't want to hear about that. That's weird. No, I don't want to hear about that. It makes you, when people tell you no over and over and over, you gotta really dig deep and kinda have that thick skin, and just because somebody tells you no, it doesn't mean no forever. It can just be no for right now. No, because it's not a good fit for them. So don't the word no just it's not personal. So don't attach this emotional feeling to it, because the word no doesn't mean like that it's fact, that it's hardcore, that it's never. Because even in my business, when people tell me no, not right now, I've had people a year later, 2 years later, come back to me and say, Amanda, I'm ready. I need to do this now because I can't keep waiting for that someday. So the same thing with family or asking for babysitters. Okay, one says no, I'm gonna ask the next one. When it comes to business too, the people that are really successful, they don't just ask one person, they don't ask 10 people. It's those people that ask 100 people that get the 10, that get the 25 clients, right? It's you just have to keep going. For me, the biggest thing was don't have the emotional attachment to the word no, because on the flip side, for me embracing that word no, when I worked in the hospital, I offended people. They wanted me to bring a dish to a potluck. And I said, no, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to bring anything tomorrow. Oh my gosh, why aren't you gonna do that? How rude of you. Why aren't you gonna bring something to this potluck tomorrow? And I was like, really, I don't have time to make something tonight. I don't have time. I'm gonna bring my own lunch. I don't want to be tempted by all this, the junk food that was gonna be there. So for me personally, it was like I didn't want to not only participate in the nutrition part, I was gonna try to, stay on this path of wellness that I was doing for myself at that moment. But more so, I didn't wanna create more stress at night, staying up late, trying to figure out what the heck I was gonna make when I had a baby and a toddler and a 6-year-old at home. So, on the flip side of things, just remember, if that word "no," it might not mean no personally, like, they're not trying to be mean, it's not gonna bring something positive to their life at that moment in time. So, I think if you can just detach that emotional feeling, because we all know that our feelings aren't necessarily facts, um, then it's easier to hear the word no.
Yeah, I love no isn't personal. And remembering our locus of control, our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, and not having an expectation for how someone else is going to respond because it's their thoughts, their emotions, their actions. They have their own free will and they
Mhm.
may be ready for what you have to offer in that moment and maybe not. I know for me, I have on my bulletin board behind me, get 100 no's as a reminder because sometimes it feels safer to just take that pressure off of trying to get someone to say yes, but can I get someone to say no? And how many times can I get someone to say no? Because if I can, again, practice that, getting no, and that doesn't mean I'm trying to get clients and they're going to say no's necessarily. It could be, again, asking for a babysitter. It could be asking for a donation. It could be asking someone to help me because for me, that's very uncomfortable. It's very vulnerable. And you talked about the courage and the strength that takes, but I also think it takes great humility. It takes great
Mhm.
humility to recognize that we cannot do everything on our own and that we have to be willing to ask for help to grow.
Yeah.
I also just have to bring this up because this phrase has come up so many times in the last several weeks for me. I can do hard things. Someone told me recently, she goes, I can do hard things. I'm Carmelite. And I think that's maybe my attraction hearing you say that in our childhood of doing things the hard way sometimes. We always got it done, but sometimes it was really hard. Is that just attraction to the Carmelite saints of just we can do hard things and hard things don't have to be scary. Hard things are beautiful. They help us grow. They help mold us into the people that God has created us to be. And I think that that's incredible. Did you know that human formation is the foundation to your spiritual castle? That is just one of the many reasons why Catholic coaching is on the rise. In a world where you find yourself placing your worth in perfection, praise, and productivity, God wants you to know that you are worthy simply because He has created you. In the words of Joshua Metcalf, my value comes from who I am, not what I do. And yours does too. If you're ready for a foundation that is free of overwhelm, self-criticism, and lashing out at your loved ones while you're chasing your dreams, come join me for a free one-on-one confidence and clarity call. You'll see transformation in just 20 minutes. Click the link in the show notes to schedule. So, we talked about advocating for ourselves and asking for help. Let's shift a little bit in the direction where you are an expert, which is in mental and emotional health. There is a connection between mental wellness and the gut brain axis. I know is a word that you use a lot. Can
Yeah.
you share with us what are some of the ways that we can help the mental emotional side of being a working woman, being a mother, of being a high achiever? I know I use this word for myself, but I would also
Mhm.
guess that you use this word for yourself as well. You like to go after all the things. You were valedictorian of your high school class, achiever oriented. What's this connection?
Yeah. So I found it fascinating. I was a nurse 10 years and I never heard the word gut brain axis ever. And, I started learning in my nursing career. Again, I kind of talked about that. We took care of the sick person, but we didn't really look at a lot of holistic things that we could do for people, really focusing on touch or massage or oils, scents, music therapy. Like in the hospital setting where I was, we didn't really talk about those things. And I even remember a doctor I worked for talking about chiropractors in a not positive way. And so I really, as an early nurse, I thought there was only one best way, but I really feel like there's a lot of pieces when it comes to health and wellness. And so when I was open, and I like to say that when I am open to learning, when you are open to other things that are going on or how other people practice. I think that's being open and curious is always the best way to approach things because I was very close minded. I feel like I worked with doctors that I trusted and doctors that taught me a lot of things, but I feel like they were very one road and not open to other approaches. So Dr. Sean Talbot is a nutritional biochemist, and he's written some really great books. Urban Myers also wrote another great book, but I was learning about this gut brain axis and how our gut health is directly related to our mental health. And I remember walking down to a nurse practitioner's office who has her own psychiatric practice now, but she was in the same hallway as me, and I remember, talking to her, and I was like, "Lindsay, what is this? Why am I hearing that our gut health is directly related to our mental health? And is that true? Is serotonin and dopamine 80 to 90% produced in our gut and not our brain?" And she says, "Well, yes, Amanda. She said, I had fellow classmates do a lot of research on that. And she's like, yes, it's true." And so my whole world was a little rocked at that moment because I'm like, wait, why are we doing some things the way that we're doing if this is true? And if my gut health might not be so healthy, then maybe that's why I feel like I'm struggling. Maybe that is why I'm stressed. We live in a fast, furious lifestyle. I feel like we're always stressed, and people just tend to feel like that's just normal. Common doesn't necessarily mean normal, but maybe that's why I'm irritable and I have a short fuse and I'm a little grumpy by the time I get home at night and I'm feeling all these ways. So I really started learning about, again, how our gut bacteria affects our mental wellness, how those neurotransmitters communicate to each other, and also how it plays a role in our hormones. So when you are really stressed, again, and I don't mean like, yes, getting married, losing a loved one, moving, like those are super high stressors in people's lives, but work is stress, right? As a business owner, you can be stressed day to day. When you work a corporate job, you can be stressed day to day. When you have kids, there's all these stressors, but how can we help our body navigate in a more positive way? That's really the whole goal. And so when we have higher stress, our stress hormone is cortisol. Well, when your cortisol's staying elevated, you're blocking the production of serotonin and dopamine. And when you don't have enough serotonin, that's a precursor to your melatonin. And we know that we need melatonin to help us sleep. And when your cortisol's up, you're having irritability, you're having a short fuse, you're waking up at 3 a.m., you're having tummy trouble, you're having this inflammation, you're having all of these things that was describing me. And it really related back to my gut health. So I personally, I learned that there are different strands of bacteria. So there's different strands of probiotics that can do different things. So I feel like when you can get really specific with the strand of bacteria and what it can do for you, then you can start seeing better results on your gut health. So eating your fermented foods, um, majority, you're like an exception. I don't want to say Kylie, but I don't want to say for everybody, but our fermented foods are good. Being mindful of what you are putting into your body really does make a difference. So I tend to use bacteria strand, I tend to use herbs and nootropics and things like that to really help my gut and my brain communicate more effectively. But I also, when it comes to mental wellness, I really do think that prayer is a big, important piece to finding more joyful moments in your life, to finding peace in the chaos. Prayer is important, exercise is important, making sure you get that quality sleep is important. And then learning some different techniques to help your body regulate that central nervous system to get back to rest and digest. Because again, we tend to be in fight or flight a lot. And when you can help your body get back into that rest and digest, doing those things that I've already mentioned, getting specific with some of your micronutrients like magnesium and your B vitamins are really important. Vitamin D, there's some specific micronutrients that we just don't get when we in our typical food diets that we typically eat here in America anyways. So when you can get more specific with those, you can see better results. But then again, doing some of those things to help regulate your central nervous system. So I teach even with my kids things like very simple. My 6-year-old, I'll just have him smell the flower and blow out the candle. And he holds up his finger when he's really crying. I just say, breathe. We're going to do some breathing techniques. There's a couple different things that you can do. Box breathing is one. You can do a side gaze that is really, really great. I love doing that one. You want to try it, Kylie?
Sure.
Okay. So the side gaze one is really easy. So for those of you listening, you can do this too. So really all that you're going to need to do is I want you to look forward and then I want you to take your eyes and gaze to the side. So gaze to the right and hold your face forward, take your eyes to the right. And I just want you to hold that until you yawn, take a deep sigh, or swallow. Oh, she's
It does
yawning, you
make you
guys.
yawn.
Okay, now go back center and you're just going to do the same thing. Look to the other side. And again, you're just going to hold that side gaze until you yawn, you swallow, you take a real big deep breath, or you sigh. And that is one simple way. Good job. You did it. Isn't that kind of weird? That
Yeah.
is kind of weird, but it does work. And that just recenters that central nervous system and helps you get back into rest and digest. So there's really simple things that you can do like that. And as I tell all my clients, I need all the things. I need all the things. So I always want to stay in this high vibe, but yet in this like de-stressed sort of way. Cause again, we can't take away the stressors, but how can I help my body navigate in a more positive way so I can be happier, so I can get better sleep, so I can have the energy. And so I, can really have more patience with my kids. And that's kind of my whole mental wellness story was I just, again, felt that irritable snappiness. And I really hated that I had a yelling parenting style. And it wasn't because I chose to do that, but that's just the way that my anxiousness was coming out. And it made me very sad. I cried about it and I had this whole mom guilt cycle. So those are a lot of really important things to me that I do every single day that are simple, but again, I can bring them in to every day where I don't feel like it's overwhelming to do because You don't want to create more stress and be overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I have all these things I have to do, but you want simple things that can help you navigate.
Absolutely. This is such a great way to show how science supports our faith. And there are many ways in which we can help our bodies and help de stress, especially as the woman who wants to go after all of the things where we need a quick minute. Breathing is so essential, and this is something that God has created our bodies to do. I know when I coached volleyball, box breathing, the 4-4-4, or we would do 6-2-7. So between volleyball plays, you don't have a lot of time. And if you're feeling stress and you're feeling pressure, and I know I had one player in particular who would always utilize this, you inhale for 6, hold for 2, exhale for 7. You didn't have a lot of time to do much, and it was hard to stop the ruminating thoughts, especially someone who was really just always beating themselves up if they made a mistake. But they had, that 15 seconds to breathe
Yeah.
while they were going back to serve a ball, right? So
Yeah.
they just had that time to reset. And as a mom, you might not have a lot of time, but you might have time to look to the side for a few seconds until you can get that yawn or that big deep breath that you need to reset. And I also want to go back to one more thing. You said being open to
Mhm.
learning something new.
Yeah.
And I will be the first to say I am very hesitant to try new things, especially when it comes to science and health, because, like
Mhm.
you said, I am an exception and I have tried things and they make me unbelievably ill. And then I don't want to try again and I don't want to be open. And I
Yeah.
think this is true not just with our health, but in our faith, when we see people worshiping in different ways, when we see people praying in different ways, to just pray to be open. If you feel like that red flag, that tensing coming up in your life, like, nope, this is wrong, ask yourself why. Does it go against anything in our faith? Does it go against the catechism? Does it go against the Catholic faith? If it does, then okay, then you set that aside. But if it doesn't, then just pray to the Lord to just be open. Lord, help me to be open to what is true, what is good, what is holy, what is helpful to me right now in this situation. Maybe we've been setting aside something that God has placed before us to help us on our holiness journey because we're being stubborn or we're scared of trying something new. So
Mhm.
I love that, just praying to be open. I think that's been so helpful in my own life as well. And so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. I do think people could avoid a lot of arguments if they just approached any conversation with being open and willing to learn something, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change your belief or what you're currently doing, but it can open you up to learning and understanding maybe where somebody else is coming from.
And it goes back to earlier, you said getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Something new might
Mhm.
feel uncomfortable, but how can we utilize the tools that we have to get more comfortable? If you could give us 3 ways to work towards getting comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Oh
what would those be? Three
gosh.
strategies.
3 ways. Um, I don't know, because it's still so uncomfortable. I think our growth comes from failures, right? I feel like some of our biggest teachers, the biggest things that we learn along our way in life is when things don't go right, when things don't go as planned, or you just kind of fail forward. Like embracing some of those thought processes, and a lot of it can be is a lot of mindset work, which I know that you do and I do with people. Is mindset is huge of how can we flip the script. And so getting uncomfortable is like when I know that even if going live, right? I going live on like Facebook or anything is that used to bring me so much anxiety. I would do like 10 jumping jacks to just kind of get myself the jitters out, and then it's like just go. But so much of it was the fear of being judged. What are other people going to say about me? What if my hair is not good? What if I just sound stupid? Like all these things. Again, what ifs, and what ifs. And then what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing? what is the worst thing that could happen if I quit my job and I start my own business? What's the worst thing that's going to happen, Amanda? You got to get a new job. Okay. Maybe that's not so scary, right? You're just going to have to get a new job. Okay. So, what are some of those, the worst case scenarios? So, again, with being uncomfortable, like it was uncomfortable, saying I was going to leave the hospital, but I knew that I was going to have to do that. When a kid is learning to tie their shoe or learning to walk, like it's not comfortable for them to fall on their face 100 times or fall off the bike, right? But they have a goal and they're really focusing on that goal. So they're just every time they fall off the bike, every time they fall forward, they're picking themselves back up. I feel like kids, toddlers, they can teach us so much. We forget that as we get older to just pick yourself back up and do it again, right? Like get back on the horse, get back on the bike. Like it's okay. And so I just feel like it's so much mindset work, but really, if you focus on falling in love with the progress instead of being perfect, it's always progress over perfection and falling in love with the process. Like you're never going to really fail because you're learning on along the way. And maybe it's all that you're learning is I'm never going to date that kind of a person again. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to eat that again because it made me feel not so good. But now I know, right? So I learned that along the way and it
Yeah.
was uncomfortable.
Love the progress. So the three that I pulled from you is number one, get to the root of what the fear is. So for example, going live, which I think just about anyone can relate to, going live on social media is incredibly intimidating. It is terrifying. I think this
Yeah.
as well. But get to the root of it. Why does it feel so scary? Is it because a camera's on? Is it because people might see you? Or in your case, the root was people might judge me. Okay, well, why is that a problem? Who are these people? Are they
Yeah.
my friends that are watching? And if they judge me, well, then they're
Then
probably not my friends.
yeah.
Are they strangers that are judging me? Well, they're strangers, so why does that matter?
Yeah. I feel like something that I always had to keep in mind was I have a message, right? Whatever you're doing, you have a message or you have a purpose for what you're wanting to do. And you're speaking to that one person that needs to hear it. So remember that you're speaking that to that one person that needs to hear it. And everybody else, you're not even speaking to them anyway. So if that's something that I always have to remember when I'm uncomfortable or I'm like, I what if one person hears what I have to say and they take away something from that, then I did my job. I can't worry about what the peanut gallery is going to say. And I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that is okay. But I'm not going to worry about them. I'm going to worry about the person who wants to hear the message. And the person that wants to hear that message is going to see past all the other imperfections, anyways.
Yeah, and I think Jesus did the same thing. Yes, he spoke to the crowds, he spoke to the hundreds, to the thousands, but he also spoke one on one and had very intimate conversations with people. And there were people who judged him. There were people who didn't get it. They weren't ready to hear what he had to say, or that particular message for that day was directed at a very individual person. And so, yeah, focus on what is the Lord asking me to say today? There's a reason for that, and you don't worry about everybody else. The second thing I heard you say was, what's the worst thing that could happen? There's a drill that I run with coaching, and it's best case, worst case scenario. And we write out, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's this thought? What's the outcome? What does it make you feel? And then we do the best. And then you just compare, is the possibility of the worst thing ever, right? You said having to get a new job. Is this risk of having to get a new job worth the possibility of being able to stay home with your family, support your kids, be at their activities, have a state of peace of mind, be able to
Mhm.
live out your moral values? Like, is that reward worth the risk of potentially having to get a new job? And the answer might be no, and that's okay. But if it's
Yeah.
yes, then okay, we can move forward from here. And then number 3, you said fail forward. I have an entire podcast episode on this with Monica Elias. It is one of the longer episodes, but there are dozens and dozens of questions in there that are going to help you reset your mind on how failing forward is beautiful and comfortable. But something you said about failing forward or falling forward and doing it again is you said it's like falling off a horse and getting back on. And one of the
Mhm.
rules, if you know anything about riding horses, is you get on the horse soon, right away. The sooner you
Right
do
away.
it, because otherwise you're going to relive that thing over and over in your brain, and it's going to become so scary that you're running from the problem instead of staring it in the face and just getting back on. So when you fail, when you fall, just do that thing again soon. And something I challenged myself to do over Lent was do something that scares me every week. And one of those was going live on Instagram and doing live prayer twice a week. So that's just another thing that
Yeah.
I know I had heard when I was trying to grow in my own progress was doing something scary every week. So it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be going live on social media for those of you that don't have your own businesses, but what's something that's just a little bit scary, a little bit out of your comfort zone?
Maybe it's just, for me, I have done some live speaking to some police officers, to departments about health and wellness. Like that was really scary for me, but I've challenged myself to do that over the last couple of years. I just sometimes I always just say yes, and then everything else is figure outable. That's something else that I live by. Say yes, commit, and then everything else you can figure it out along the way. But maybe it's just, we went to a couple 4th of July parties with people. We were invited and it was nice, so nice to be invited, but we only really knew like one couple to these houses that we went to. So maybe it's just getting a little uncomfortable and going out and then meeting new people because that can be really scary. Like having those conversations to build new friendships, or when your kid starts preschool, you're walking up to other moms that have their kids in preschool, but sometimes that's where some of your great friendships can come from, is having the courage to go say hello to somebody else.
Yeah. And again, going back to kids, what can we learn from our kids? I love watching kids at the playground. They will go up to strangers and say, "Will you be my friend?"
Yes.
We do not do that as adults. We hide in our phones. We hide in our
Yeah.
phones when we're uncomfortable.
Yep. Yep. So
This has been awesome. Before we get to our prayer tip, where can people find you if they want to learn more about Someday Wellness?
you can find some tips and things that I post along with some dancing entertainment. I love to dance. So that is something where I get uncomfortable, but it's something that brings me joy, and I just have to put it out there. And sometimes I wonder, oh gosh, what are people going to say about me? But again, I have random people tell me, oh my gosh, I love watching you dance. So even if it brings somebody a smile or a joyful laughter, that's a goal. I'm on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I don't have a ton on Instagram, but also TikTok. I would say Facebook is probably the better place for you to find me. Um, but yeah, any of the socials, you can just search Someday Wellness and you'll find me. Otherwise, you can Google me too. I do have a little Google notification out there as well.
Just look for the picture that looks like me and you will find Amanda.
Yeah.
All right. I always ask my guests to close us with either a prayer tip or a scripture verse. And you had a prayer tip that you were going to share today.
Yeah. A little food for that when it comes to praying. So, a difference, and I feel like as I get older, I shouldn't say I feel like I know as I get older, I remember going through a phase, around college where I didn't attend church as often as I should. And I remember like being in a theology class, and I remember a sister telling the class, in time, you will come back around. Like, just God is going to work through you. So, in time, since I've been married, we started going back to church, like making it a very big priority in our life. So, when it comes to prayer, I feel like as a busy mom, like I find myself, I have prayerful moments in the pockets of my life. And that's kind of how I started a business too, was just in the pockets of my life. And I don't want to say that's something that I love about you is like you are very intentional with your prayer and your quiet moments. And I have not gotten there yet. But for me, I tend to pray a lot throughout my day, whether I'm in the car and I'm looking up to the sky or the sunset or the sunrise or the quiet crickets in the at the night and the stars, like all these little moments, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is just amazing," when I might just say a quick little prayer. Um, but my biggest thing is if you feel like, "Man, I really struggle to have prayer time throughout my day," something that sticks with me is if you just pray when you're going to bed at night, and I know we've had this conversation, you're like, "I can't pray when I lay down to go to sleep because I just go to sleep." Well, same for me is I might drift off to sleep, but how does a mom feel at the end of the day when she's holding her baby or holding her toddler? How fulfilled does she feel when her baby goes to sleep in her arms? So how does God feel when you go to sleep at night praying to him?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for me, when I do go to bed, I can't do like my intentional prayers when I lay down to sleep, but growing up, it was always Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be. That was
Yeah.
like the prayer routine that I learned. And I still do that a lot going to bed at night, like as I'm getting ready to close my eyes. But I have found that when I'm doing that, when I wake up in the night, those prayers are the things that are still on my mind. I don't know if that happens to you.
Not usually, but I do tell my kids when they can't sleep at night, I'm like, "Well, just when you wake up, pray. Don't wake me up, pray." And they tend to do that.
Yeah, I love that beautiful imagery though of the sleeping baby. And yeah, we get a rest in our father's arms as
Yeah.
we go to sleep.
So I all that to take away is if you feel like you struggle to get prayerful moments in your life or you have struggled to set aside time to pray, is just know that it's okay if you're falling asleep because your Lord is going to be fulfilled because you're falling asleep in his arms with one thing on your mind, and that's him.
Yeah. And the last thing on your mind for the day is the most important thing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this. And be sure to go check out Amanda at Someday Wellness. Again, we look very similar. You will notice it when you see her picture. I'll make sure to share on my Instagram as well. And I'm so grateful for you and for your yes to God to doing what is uncomfortable and to continuously put yourself out of your comfort zone for the good of others. I know you have kept me out of the hospital multiple times through the work that you are doing, and I'm just grateful to you as a nurse, but also as my sister.
Oh, thank you. I love you.
Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie M. Hine. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.